G'day Bomber fans, so we are concluding the draft player profile series and we're saving the best till last. Today we are going to be talking about Mr. Sullivan Robey. This is one of the most fascinating and exciting draft prospects we've seen in a long time. I'm really excited to talk about him today. Of course, we do have to mention the recent news with Sullivan Robey before we start. I'm not going to talk about his injury too much, but we've discovered that he has a stress response in his back and won't be training in the next month. He will be resuming his preseason in 2026. I'm personally not too worried by that. I think this is a very common occurrence for players, young athletes, who have these crazy growth spurts like Sullivan Robey has had. Some of the best players in the comp right now, started their career in the same way. So I wouldn't be too worried by a stress response in a young athlete's back. It's when it gets to the stress fracture territory and it sticks around, that's when you worry. But right now, I wouldn't be too worried. I think the club's going to be all over this, protecting his body, because this guy, he's not someone who we need for 2026. This is a long-term project player. He is a could-be-anything player. He is high upside in every sense of the word. So let's talk about Sullivan Robey. So going into the draft, there was one name on the minds of every Essendon fan in the universe, and that name was Sullivan Robey. We were all really hoping and praying that he would somehow slide to our selection so that the Bombers could take him, but we weren't expecting it. In fact, the draft guru Cal Toomey, who never gets his mock drafts wrong, predicted the Richmond Tigers to take him from under our noses before we could have a chance to select him. And then, of course, one of the biggest draft surprises in a long time, with pick 8, Richmond read out the name Sam Grill, and Essendon fans across the universe celebrate. It was a great moment, because then with pick 9, the Essendon Football Club selected Sullivan Robey, completing the biggest draft bolt you'll ever see. He went from nowhere to pick 9. Of course, it's made all the more better because he's an Essendon fan growing up, so he gets to join his boyhood club, the club that he said he wanted to be playing for. That's fantastic. You love to see it. We've drafted another Essendon fan to the club. That's the 3rd this year already. But yeah, it's a crazy story. Like, this guy is such a fascinating draft prospect, an exciting draft prospect. We talk about the Dyson Sharps of the world, the bankable midfielders who have been doing it for years at a high level. This guy is not bankable. He is an enigma, as Fiona from Bomber Banter likes to say. He is a could-be-anything player. So why is this guy such an enticing and exciting, but a scary and risky draft prospect all rolled into one? Really, it's because he really hasn't played much footy. We're drafting him off a few weeks of footy. That's just the truth. This guy was nowhere coming into the year. In fact, he'd been dropped by the Dandenong Stingrays at age 16, told to work on his body, work on his footy, and he did. He built a home gym, was in there 6 or 7 days a week pumping iron, you can tell. He was working really hard in the off-season while his friends and teammates were resting. This guy worked seriously hard on getting back to a stage where, he could have AFL clubs interested in him, and it just so happened at the same time, while this was going on, he was having an absurd growth spurt. He was 175 centimeters when he was dropped by the Dandenong Stingrays. Fast forward 2 years, he is 192 centimeters tall. He has grown 17 centimeters in 2 years. That is crazy. It's a completely different body. He's a completely different person and style of footballer. Like he went from a nuggety inside midfielder to an absolute brute of a human, pumping iron, growing, improving his footy. He's nowhere coming into the year, and then some really good Roeville form gets him to a stage where he earns a spot on the Eastern Rangers list. He plays 9 Talent League games, but every single one of them that he played was outstanding and eye-catching. Even when he cracked his collarbone late in the year, he was still dominant. It really is an incredible story. Those 9 games of footy are why this guy is getting drafted. He wasn't even in consideration for Vic Metro at Champs because he wasn't playing, he wasn't known at that stage by AFL clubs. Clubs didn't know about him until, halfway through the year. He hadn't spoken to a single club coming into the season, and then by the end of the year, they all knew who he was. The whole world knew who he was, the AFL world. He's taken inside the top 10 in the draft. It is an incredible rise up a draft board. I haven't seen anything like it, really. Before we talk about him as a player, because we're going to, don't worry, you guys would know that I've been really hyped up about the characteristics and personalities of these players. It seems like the club is going really hard at drafting not just good players, but good people as well, so to fit into the culture. And I had a really good chat this year with the head coach of the Roeville Hawks, Ben Wise. He coached Sullivan Robey this year, and he filled me with a lot of confidence that this guy comes into the team as a really good person and potential leader. He was another captain that we've drafted. He captained the Roeville under-19s team. But just the way that Ben Wise talked about him, his determination, his desire to be on an AFL list again, the work that this guy's put in is crazy. There's not many draft prospects going around that have worked as hard as Sullivan Robey has. But what I really liked about the chat that I had is that Ben told me that, despite all the attention that Sullivan Robey was getting, despite him, turning into a household name, being put in highlights reels, being talked about every day pretty much by us draft nerds, Sullivan Robey remained modest and humble, if not a bit embarrassed. Apparently, this guy was embarrassed to be receiving the amount of attention he was getting, and he would turn up to Roeville games on the weekends, watching them play footy after having 40 disposal games for the Eastern Rangers, and was so humble and still cared so much about his club team. And I love that. This guy hasn't forgotten his roots. He even you see how well spoken he is, and he always goes back to talk about his family, but also his club that got him to the stage where he could be at. This guy has worked so hard on getting to the player he is, and it's not just a 17 centimeter growth spurt. You see that in the headlines, this guy has grown into a new body to become a new AFL player. It's not just that, it is seriously hard work that got him there as well. So Sullivan Robey as a player is fascinating because obviously this guy has spent most of his life playing as a smaller in and under scrappy type midfielder forward. He's now a 192 centimeter midfielder forward type player. I wouldn't lock him down to either role. I've spoken to different people who suggest he could play, as an elite midfielder or an elite forward. Either way, he's dominated for both in positions. He's had 40 disposal games in the midfield. He's had massive games up forward, kicking 4 goals on grand final day for the Eastern Rangers. He was one of the best on ground, despite playing with a cracked collarbone. So that is great. He is, he perseveres, and that's a big theme throughout his draft story over the last few years. But what should we expect from Sullivan Robey as a player? Good question. I really don't know. That's the fun thing about Sullivan Robey. I think he really fits that could be anything mold. We not only don't have a clue what quality of player he will be going forward, it is a big unknown, but we also don't know what position he's going to play. So he's got the tools to make it in either. His contest work is brilliant. He is a massive boy. He's really strong, really good on ground level. He was originally a smaller midfielder, as I said. So you kind of see him keep that ground level cleanliness and mobility that he had before the growth spurt, but also develop more in his frame to have more scope and range as a player. As a midfielder, he would be powerful, tough, clean on the outside. He's actually a really underrated kick of the footy, and his goal scoring conversion shows that. He kicked 18 goals too in his 9 Talent League games. He not only has distance by foot, but is also accurate. So yes, his size and just brute competitiveness suggests he is a big inside midfielder, but I actually think he's a blend. He's both. I personally think his best work this year has been on the outside of contest. Yes, he is as competitive as anyone in this draft, but he is a really clean and silky player as well, which you don't really get with players that tall. So that's interesting. I think, if anything, he's probably going to be looking to hone in and improve on that stoppage craft and contested ball winning ability even more, because those are the areas of his game that have probably been lacking from before that growth spurt. And I think that's why everyone's so excited about him, because he's not just a big body. He is a genuinely good footballer and probably still is discovering how to play in his body a bit. Like he hasn't been the type of player that he has been for long at all. Like it's probably been a year. The bloke grew 17 centimeters in 2 seasons. It completely transformed his game, and he would no doubt still be learning how to play in his new body. And that's why there is so much upside, because even though there is that rawness to him, he's a very raw player, he is still dominating. Some of the performances this year were absurd. 40 disposals and 3 goals against the Western Jets. 26-2 the week after that. In a grand final, he kicks 4 goals. It's crazy to think of what he managed to do and how he dominated games, coming into a team so late in the year. It really is, like, you look at him play and he just catches your eyes. Even when he doesn't have the footy, he is catching your eyes, whether he's, chasing down a player, that competitiveness and natural instinct to win the footy is something you don't teach. This guy just cracks in. He really gets to work. He tries so hard. and that is kind of reflected by, how he got to this stage in his journey. He tried so hard to get here. That kind of goes on and off the field as well. This is someone who's not going to, be as competitive and hard at it as he is on the footy field, but he'll also be that at training as well and really set the standards for his team. If we're looking at downsides, you can always find a downside with any draft prospect, even any AFL player. Nobody's perfect. You can definitely find some with Sullivan Robey, but I think the common occurrence when you look at the downsides and the common theme, the underlying theme and message there is that it's usually to do with exposure. This guy came from the clouds to be where he is. He was playing club footy, a few months ago. He was nowhere to start the year. The fact is, he is underexposed. You look at guys like Dyson Sharp, for example. He had state league teammates, former AFL players alongside him. He's had the best coaches for his age, in the state setup for central districts. He's had, quality dietitians, the best analytics operations around him. He has had everything you can have to be a quality AFL player. He has had the resources surrounding him to really grow as a player. Sullivan Robey had a home gym. He was playing club footy to start the year. Even if he is a smart footballer, he would just know less about the game than other draft prospects. I've got footy IQ written down there. That's not because he's dumb or anything. I'm not calling him a dumb footballer. He just hasn't had the level of coaching and attention to detail placed on him yet. That's why I wouldn't be locking him into play round 1 next year, because he not only needs to learn about taking care of his body and managing his workloads, but he also needs to learn how to play in a professional system, because he's barely done that. He's had 9 games in the Talent League. He barely had a preseason there, I think, as well. He might have been in the preseason for the Eastern Rangers, but he didn't make the team. He really has to catch up on a lot of lessons that he has missed, having been left out of junior setups. And that ties into his endurance a bit as well. This guy is a very big boy, very muscly boy, but I think if anything, he's probably got a bit too much muscle on him, and I believe the club is going to be trying to cut down on a bit of that muscle and make him a bit trimmer and slimmer so he can, be a bit fitter and more mobile with his running. That's the thing. If he had the resources around him that other draft prospects have, he would have already done these things. He would know what size he has to be. He would know what diet he has to be on. He would know, where to be on a footy field more often. He would be a smarter, better footballer if he had the resources around him that Dyson Sharp and other draft prospects had. But the fact is, he didn't. This guy was in a home gym doing it on his own, really, at club footy level. And that is just, it's not a downside, but it's a hindrance to a draft prospect's development. Obviously he's gone to a stage where he's a top 10 prospect, so that's great, but that's mostly him and the lack of resources around him suggests that there is a lot that this guy has to learn and grow and develop in. But that's really exciting because, with those lack of resources, he was still dominating games as well. So yeah, I think when you look at Sullivan Robey, there are a few weaknesses in his game. He can improve, slim in his body a bit, improve his endurance, improve his mobility a bit as well. Again, he's still growing into his body. I think he could be a bit better in the air for his size, and that will definitely come. He's only been this tall player for, a year or two barely, but it really is exposure. This guy is underexposed. I wouldn't be surprised if he takes longer to develop and become a good player. That's why I look at him as a long-term project. I don't expect him to be, tearing it up in 2026. And if he is, I think we should really watch out, because that would be, it would show us that we've got a real player on our hands. But guys, I think he'll be scaling it back at the hangar, obviously, with that injury. He's going to be training less in the next few weeks. And when he does come back to training, he'll probably ease into it a bit. I wouldn't be expecting to see too much of him in 2026. I know he was taken high in the draft, but I don't think that was a ready-made selection. Dyson Sharp is a ready-made selection. He can come in round 1. I think Sullivan Robey is someone we're going to be watching out for the years to come. This isn't someone who's going to get it all together straight away. He hasn't had the resources to be able to do that. He has so much to learn, so much to catch up on. I'm really excited to see what he's like in a few years. So yeah, Sully Robey, probably the most popular draft prospect all year for Essendon fans, or really the back half of the year. I think we all really fell in love with him. Obviously, he is a fan of the Essendon Football Club as well, so that helps. That's the third player from this draft who's a fan of the Bombers, and then one of them's a neutral, so there you go. But yeah, as Fiona from Bomber Banter likes to say, this guy is an enigma. He is a could-be-anything player. He is high upside. He really is high upside, and that is the fascinating thing. You know, you look at him and the players he's often compared to, it's you know, Dusty Martin, Jordan De Goey. I'm not saying he's going to be at that level. Like, if you get, you know, even half of Dusty Martin, you've won. But that's the type of player that he will look like if he gets to that stage. You know, he's really strong, really physical, really competitive. This guy works incredibly hard on and off the field. He is always trying to improve, and we've seen that. You know, he was nowhere a couple of years ago. He's now a top 10 draft pick. That doesn't just happen because of a growth spurt. That happens because of really, really hard work. And it's stories like that give me a lot of confidence. You know, I know that you know, this guy could be anything, both, you know, high or low. We don't know yet. But, you know, the way that he prepares and the way that he plays gives me a lot of confidence that he is going to work really, really hard to become the best player he could be. He's very mature, very well spoken. I'm excited. You know, I think this is a could be anything player. He could be an absolute star of the comp. Will he be that? We don't know. We'll find out in about 3 or 4 years. And that's the stressful thing about the draft. You know, you get really excited for these players on the list, and then once they're there, you realize it's now on the development team to get the most out of them. And that development team hasn't always been the greatest in history with the Bombers. But yeah, we'll see. It's a big unknown at the moment with Sullivan Robey, but I'm really excited to watch him develop and play. This guy is already a fan favorite. I think we're all really excited to see him play. Hopefully he gets some goes early into 2026, because that would be good fun, and I wouldn't put it past him. I think this guy definitely could play early in the year next year, and it'd be good to see. But that is all, Bomber fans. That is the last of the draft profile series. I'll have more videos coming out, though. I'll have a best 23 video and maybe even a ladder predictor as well. Some training updates. I might get some guests on for that. But that is all. Like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, and as always, go Bombers.